Let's record 20 minutes of me just doing monster noises, and then that's the video.
I feel like people will get horny off of that.
What do you mean people will get horny off of that? So, as many of you know, I've been on a Dimension 20 kick because I don't have the ability to look into something for my channel without automatically hyperfixating on it. And so I was going through a bunch of Dimension 20's videos, and a lot of people told me I needed to watch Adventuring Academy, which I had never heard of before. And I found a clip from one of the episodes where they talked about champions versus underdogs.
Look, all I'm gonna say is this, okay? I think that embracing some of the historical tropes of unlikely heroes and those that have come from a non-adventuring background, you know, not everyone in our world is Sherlock Holmes, not everyone is the Hulk, not everyone is Jean Grey, not everyone is the most super duper maximized person, and maybe the little guy should win one every once in a while.
And this concept fascinated me. See, champions versus underdogs is the idea of what kind of characters do you make in a campaign? Do you create champions who are supposed to be superpowered, incredible, demigods, made to overcome challenges? Or do you create underdogs? Characters who are meant to fight against insurmountable odds. Characters who shouldn't win, but might anyways. And this was a fascinating conversation, especially since the answer is obviously, I don't know, what does your table want to do? What does the campaign call for? Demigods versus underdogs, champions versus underdogs is really just a conversation of, do you want to play overpowered or min-maxed characters, or do you want to play characters who need to overcome a challenge in order to reach their true potential? And it really does depend on what types of characters you want to play, but also the system you're playing. We all know that D&D 5e specifically really leads towards the champions idea. Characters who are incredibly powerful. But there are a lot of systems out there that lean more towards underdog. Things like Call of Cthulhu or anything similar where the idea is you're facing something you're just not going to beat, but you could still try. And so in diving into this concept, I began to think specifically about one concept in the middle. Underdogs who become champions. And let's be honest, that's what the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons was meant to do. To start you off at low levels, but eventually you become these people rivaling what are essentially gods. However, I think the balance was really messed up and the characters got way too powerful way too quickly. But that doesn't mean it's not an interesting concept to pursue. See, many times in stories, we see people who have the ability to achieve great things become more powerful than anybody could ever know, but there's usually a block in the way, something that's going to prevent them from being able to accomplish that goal. Whether it is a mental block, if there's something in their past they have yet to overcome, or whether it's a very literal block, like they must overcome a prophecy, or they must at first be able to achieve something in order to create that great power. But those are the stories I specifically really enjoy looking at. And so there's this spectrum of champions, underdogs, and there's something in the middle of someone with just great potential. This could be a chosen one, this could be somebody who has the ability to achieve this power, or it could be just your average Joe who does have the ability to achieve this like anybody else. And that's really where I find the perfect middle ground to run my games in. Typically what I will do is I will start with characters in their campaigns running into at very early levels something they just could never overcome. But it's usually not something that is actually in the moment a challenge for them. It's not something that is meant to be overcome, just something that exists. In one campaign that I'm running, at the very first session, they ran into a benefactor, somebody who was far more powerful than anybody else in the world, who wanted to sponsor them, who wanted to help them achieve their goals. But ultimately, this character would end up being the villain, something they would have to fight against. And in those early levels, they knew how powerful they were, but it didn't mean a whole ton because they didn't have to face off against this individual. But eventually they would, showing them the power cap of the world, showing them where things are supposed to be at, and then allowing them to, over the course of the campaign, get to that level and then eventually surpass it is where I think most of the fun of trying to find where characters should lie is. Think about it this way. How many times in stories have we established a power cap in the power system? Think of it like things from Full Metal Alchemist. In Full Metal Alchemist, in order to create alchemy, which is the power system of the world, you have to have an alchemist circle, a specific amount of lines and symbols which will allow you to access the magic system in that world. However, there's a character who can overcome this limitation, which is Edward Elric. By clapping his hands together together, he's able to create an alchemist circle within himself, which then inherently puts him on a level higher than everybody else. And this is considered to kind of be the top tier power in this world. But over the course of the story, we get to see higher and higher levels of power until eventually Edward reaches a level beyond this by talking to what is essentially God in the world. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, but that show's been out for a long time. The point is establishing a power cap and then at the very last moment allowing the characters to surpass this cap is one of the most empowering and exciting moments of any story. And this could be done in a variety of ways. And a lot of the times in our stories, it can be scary to do this because it can feel like a deus ex machina, almost as if we have established rules and then we broke it just to allow the characters to do something insane at the end of it for no other reason than to surpass those limits and give them something to do, and it comes out of nowhere. But no, it doesn't. If you very firmly establish the cap early on in the campaign, then when it comes time to hit that cap, surpassing it may seem like the only option. Think about it this way. You've established that that is the highest level of power that the characters can achieve, but there is no way to beat the villains if they don't surpass that level. Now at this point, in the back of everybody's heads, we know there must be something else going on. And the earlier that you establish the level of power that they can reach, the earlier on they begin to wonder how to surpass that level. And in TTRPGs, it could be interesting because this could be something like the wish spell. The wish spell is incredibly powerful and can allow your characters to do basically everything, shattering that cap. So it could always be established early on that there was always a chance of getting that. Do the characters know the wish spell exists? Maybe not. The players do. And so it won't seem like this deus ex machina because they knew about it in the back of their heads the whole time. The idea of establishing this and allowing the characters to start as underdogs, reach the level of champions, and then eventually surpass that, I think is more interesting than just starting them as champions or starting them as underdogs and keeping them there the whole time. Now this is just my specific preference when it comes to storytelling. Anybody could do something else, and I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. However, I do think it's a very interesting one that doesn't get explored very often. A lot of the times, allowing characters to break the mechanics of the TTRPG that they're playing in can be one of the most exciting things, so long as you keep in mind two things. One, it must be something that is foreshadowed at least a little bit and is in the back of the players' minds, or it will simply feel cheap. But two, it must happen near the end of the campaign. Allowing them to do it too early on then inherently just breaks everything within the TTRPG that you're playing. I mean, now you're overpowered and where's the stakes of the story? But on the other hand, if you do it too late into the game, at that point, it kind of does feel like that general just deus ex machina. It has to be right at the climax of where the story hits, or it just kind of feels like something that happens. You don't want it to feel like a Mary Sue or Gary Sue situation, where the players were able to do this just because they were the players. It has to feel earned. But if you can do that and reach them to that point, it can be some of the highest highs ever in any campaign and really make the players feel like the main characters, which they are. And I think that's something super fun to do. So it was interesting going through and seeing the simple 5-minute video on Dimension 20 of champions versus underdogs and finding something I really enjoyed and finally putting a name to what I specifically like to do in my stories. And it's not something I do with every campaign because then it becomes predictable. But if you do that in your stories, I think it could be an awesome time and really help you achieve the highest highs in general in anything that you're doing. And as you work to achieve this different level, you have to keep in mind that you have to keep the atmosphere at your table proper and in the right space. In order to create these high moments, you have to have everybody invested and feeling like they truly know what's going on, which means you have to have a right set for combat. Which introduces us to the sponsor of today's video, Geek Take Games. Geek Take Games is an incredible TTRPG company which gives printed miniatures which you can use and take anywhere. The best thing about these is the fact that they're portable, which is honestly a lifesaver for me considering the fact that I don't ever play at my own home. I go to other places and play there. And these allow you to simply take their 2D miniatures with incredibly cute art styles and put them into the reusable bases, which you can then take away, put back in their reusable pouches, and go back home. You could do this in order to set up encounter designs, whether it is just the monsters or the terrain around you. It allows you to take a simple gridded paper and make it an incredible encounter without hardly any effort on you. All you have to do is have those minis in place. And again, because they're so easy to carry, you can have tons of them on you at any time. I really can't recommend these guys enough, and their minis have been an absolute lightsaber. Lightsaber? So if you want to go to the link down in the description below in order to check them out, it would mean a ton, as not only does it help them out, it also helps out the channel and is absolutely incredible for everybody all around. This has been the hardest ad to record for no reason None of this has been a tongue twister. I've made it so difficult. Okay, we're great, we've done it. So consider this stuff for your games and consider if this is the type of thing you want to do. Considering the power level of your characters based on the world around you is honestly a hugely crucial portion of any world building or campaign planning, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you want to find more Game Master tips or just generally videos about TTRPGs, you can go through my whole catalog right here. And don't forget to like, subscribe, all the stupid YouTube stuff, because it helps up the channel, and then you also know when I release a video, and you could see more of my ugly mug on your screen. Great, okay. This is the best intro I've ever recorded. Go out of the world and make it your own. Nailed it.